your overall leaders are putting on a clinic in traffic driving here this afternoon. There's the 54 car of Terry Borcheller. Actually, Andy Pilgrim remains on board. He'll turn it over to Borcheller in the second pit stop. Your leader continues to be the number 70 Mazda. Sylvain Tremblay on board that car.
And Andy Pilgrim has done a remarkable job here. As you can see, he's bridged that gap up to Tremblay just about. He was well back, and he's managed to work his way through traffic, get by Eric Van Cleef, who's in that white Toyota Supra you see right there, and now is almost in touch with Sylvain Tremblay.
Of course, he had a long way to go once the green flag flew after that lengthy yellow after a miscue in the pit stop. So once again, the 54 BMW is up to second. You can see the gap there between first and second. And at the top of the screen, you could also see Van Cleef in the third position. But the driver that actually started this car is Joe Vardy. Qualified this car yesterday for the pole position. Had it out in the lead when they made the pit stop. He is standing by in the pit lane with Greg Creamer.
Boy, you are in the middle of a great battle out there. Now, Andy Pilgrim used to be a teammate of yours driving Pontiacs. You guys are going after each other now.
Yeah, it's good to race with somebody you can trust, and because me and Andy have been driving partners for years, I knew how close we could get, and we were trying to go through that traffic, but everybody was doing a great job.
Rumors up and down pit lane is that the Mazda really kind of has the legs here, and that everybody else is going to be struggling a little bit. Is that, are you having some fun out there?
Well, I'll tell you, the team's so good. It makes the car look good, and it's a good car anyway. It's got some good speed because of the uphills here, and you know, it gives away some other places. That BMW is faster than me in the turn, so it's going to be a good race.
Are you surprised, Jeremy, that all of this car is out of production? Maybe some other teams are not trying to use this car in competition?
Well, it's interesting. The car is no longer available for sale. Of course, the M3 is, but the Mazda is not, and the Toyota is coming, you know, close to the end of its life as well. So some very healthy racing, but that Mazda, the supply of those RX-7s is going to dwindle. And of course, there's not as big a reason for Mazda to support that from a contingency program if they don't sell the car anymore. So it becomes a tricky situation when you start running these older cars.
So right now, it would appear that that is the car to beat here this afternoon.
Well, these cars are pretty evenly matched. As Joe Vardy alluded to, certainly the Mazda has got the horsepower and the hills really help them, but the BMW's got them covered on the handling.
Now you see, once again, the cars are beginning to pull into traffic. There's a look at Eric Van Cleef in the 88 Supra. You go on board with Eric Van Cleef. Over from Craig Conway, who gave us that great in-car camera shot of the track description earlier in the program. Great in-car shot here. As you watch the leaders battle for the lead, slipped just a bit in that corner.
And now you can see out front, Andy Pilgrim is closed right up on Sylvain Tremblay. And I think we're going to have a race for the lead here shortly.
Is that the 6 car? Leading in class now is Steve Nowicki. Steve going for his 4th straight victory this season.
And now the 3 leaders pretty much in touch here, although Van Cleef definitely getting held up by a back marker through turn 8, and that hurting Van Cleef quite a bit. But now Pilgrim is on the rear bumper of Tremblay as they head for turn 1.
An area where Van Cleef perhaps can get by that slower car and move up to challenge Andy Pilgrim for second. To Sylvain Tremblay continues to lead. Welcome back to our coverage of the Speedvision Cup. I'm Gary Lee alongside Jeremy Dale with Calvin Fish and Greg Creamer patrolling the pit lane. Once again, the Mazda's up in front. Joe Vardy put it on the pole, led early, turned it over to his teammate and car owner Sylvain Tremblay, and he continues to set the pace. But there's the BMW right behind him. Andy Pilgrim still in the cockpit. He had to turn that car over to Terry Borcheller. So we'll anticipate one more stop for both these cars. First, drivers. Let's go to pit lane, and here's Greg in the BMW pit.
Well, there's a reason that the number 54 BMW is starting to close it up. You see here, Terry Borschler very interested right now. He'll be getting in that car. Just checked in with Terry, and the handling changes they made to the car, Andy Pilgrim called in and said it made the car change from great to perfect. The understeer they were suffering is gone, and Andy is just leaning on it, running absolutely flat out to keep that Mazda in sight. Obviously, it's working pretty well, just taking the lead.
I guess that's one advantage to being the second driver. To go out, you let the first driver kind of set the car up for you.
Well, under the very special circumstances here this weekend, which was they got very little time in the dry, so you can see that Andy Pilgrim able to take advantage of the excellent handling from the M3. Now we'll probably see Tremblay close it up climbing the hill here, but probably won't have enough to get by him. So this may be Pilgrim's opportunity to stretch out that lead that they wanted to get in that first stint.
You see right there in a close third is Eric Van Cleef. 3 white cars right together, 1, 2, and 3 on the racetrack.
Now that's the team car, the 71 car that Pilgrim will be coming up to put a lap on. That car has already been off the racetrack a couple of times today.
Contact with the guardrail at least once. Picked up a banner on another contact.
Now you can see Van Cleef's got a bit of a run. He's got Tremblay in his sights as he runs up on the rumble strips exiting turn 1. Makes the camera vibrate a little bit.
Oh, a spin. Gary Smith off the racetrack in a big way. Did a good job of recovery.
Oh my God.
A lot of smoke there. That could be a major engine problem.
That is not where you want to go off the racetrack. I can tell you that from driving
Having
around.
been off there?
Well, no, I've never been off there, thank goodness, because that is a very, very quick part of the racetrack. One of the quickest corners on this racetrack. It's where leaders are coming up to now. They're exiting 3, headed for 4, and this is where that Mustang went off, going down the hill here.
Well, we saw some smoke and indicated that perhaps there was an engine problem.
Look
Looks
at the
like
leaders
there's oil.
there.
There's some oil on the racetrack
There's
there.
definitely oil on the racetrack. Both those leading cars, big slides. Here we go on board.
He's on board with Gary, and you can see right there. Look at the smoke inside the cockpit before he loses it. Grabs a whole lot of steering wheel, trying to hang on, and does a nice job of correcting. And that is just pure reaction on his part.
And I'm going to throw in a little bit of luck, because to have a motor go and dump oil on your rear tires at that point, there is an element of luck there. And thank goodness he didn't hit anything hard. And thank goodness that the leaders didn't get taken out by that oil, because Andy Pilgrim had a huge slide going there coming down through turn 4.
Well, you saw he was sawing on that steering wheel, doing his best to maintain control. Of course, you get out there in the grass, it's almost as slick as being on the oil that's on the racing surface. You're looking at Mike Fitzgerald now, who is the leader in the sports class this afternoon. In the BMW number 81.
This is a cousin of the M3, of course, that car. So same basic platform, a very good handling car, just not as powerful as the M3.
I want to get a report on the compact class. Obviously, 4 classes racing here this afternoon. So let's go back to the pit lane and Calvin Fish.
In the compact division, we have the father and son team. Mike Speakman, the son, is getting out right now, going to be replaced by his father, Bob. These guys are running in the top 5 in this Nissan Sentra now, and this is a class typically dominated by the Hondas and the Mazda, so they're really an interloper, so to speak. It's going to be interesting to see with this pit stop strategy. They're very low on fuel, so they're pitting under green. This may hurt them a little bit, but you never know how things work out. If they can go the rest of the distance and get some good track position, hopefully they can get a good result here today.
You know, Jeremy, racing can be a family sport. It's great to see father and son competing as teammates.
There is that debris flag. And that flag was probably not up, because the leaders were very close to that Mustang when it went off. There's the top 5 at Mosport Park for the Speedvision Cup. Here's your class leaders. We'll be back.
We welcome you back to our coverage of the Speedvision Cup, round 4, where Andy Pilgrim continues to lead in a BMW. There's that number 70 Mazda in second, and the 88 Super riding in third. Eric Van Cleef back there in third position. There is your leader, Andy Pilgrim. And he will turn the car over to Terry Borschler on this next pit stop. Now, of course, for both drivers to get points, each driver has to drive a certain amount of time in these races.
They do, and that's not normally a problem unless you end up with some very unusual full-course yellow periods. It's not very common that you have to make a special pit stop just to get a driver in or out, so that driver can either get their time or not be over the time limit. So generally, you work that strategy, and you go into the race with a rough idea as to what you want to do, and then you make changes from there. And we saw Vardy ran the first stint and then got out, and Tremblay got in the Mazda. And in terms of Pilgrim, he stayed in for the first two, and Borcheller will get in as we go on board now with Tremblay as these guys start to work through some traffic.
Pretty wide, perhaps? No.
Boy, that's not where you want to get hung out on the outside, and he gets into the apex going down through turn one. But Van Cleef does go around the outside of that slower car now, tries to go around the outside.
They almost get together. There was almost contact in that corner.
Well, there might have even been a little bit of rubbing. Van Cleef had a whole bucket load of opposite lock there coming over that first apex at 5A.
What you saw from the in-car camera shot, all the lap cars between first and second.
Yeah, Pilgrim now is really legging it out on these two. I mean, Pilgrim's got about a 5-second lead at this stage of the game, so that's what he needs to do. Of course, everyone's going to have to make another stop, but the bigger the lead, the more cushion you have.
Well, the combination of lap drivers between first place and second place, and the fact that first place or second place and third place are battling, really gives the advantage to Andy Pilgrim.
And it looks like Van Cleef made a small mistake there at the apex of 10.
There's your third place in the compact class. We have cameras all over the place here this weekend.
And look at these guys running very close. Nose to tails. They come through 9, up into 10, out onto the main straightaway. That's the 04 Nissan Sentra that we saw in the pit just a moment ago.
Out into turn 1. Back up in front with Andy Pilgrim. And there's a spin on the racetrack right behind your leader. 11th place overall, finds a gear, grabs the clutch, and let's get back on the racetrack. That was right behind the leader.
That's a fairly common spin there. You get a little wide at that first apex, and you drop that left rear wheel between 5A and 5B, and that will get you turned around pretty quickly.
Well, not much has changed, except that we've had some lap traffic in between your leaders. 2 lap cars right now, but first, second, third remain as they've been running now for a number of laps, with Andy Pilgrim just clicking off the laps till it's time for that second final pit stop, and he'll turn the driving shoulder over to Terry Borcheller. This is the team that was victorious at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, a 3-hour event back on April the 25th. Once again, Andy Pilgrim is leading. Tremblay second, then it's Van Cleef, Ron Johnson. There you take a look at your class leaders from Mosport.
BF Goodrich presents Great Moments in Trans Am. Dallas 1996, second to last race of the season. Late in the race, Boris Said leads Dorsey Schrader and Ron Fellows. Schrader, needing a strong showing to keep his championship hopes alive, gets wide around a corner, hits a wall, and exits the race. Moments later, Fellows passes Said on the inside, takes the lead, and cruises to victory.
Pit stop activity for the compact class. Here's Greg Creamer.
The number 6 Honda Del Sol, leader in the compact class, is coming in. They're playing a little bit different strategy than any of the other cars in the compact division. All the other cars stopped during that long yellow. They thought that was going to put a little bit too much pressure on conserving fuel at the end based on the window to do it in one stop. They elected to stay out and pit when they had planned to pit, yellow or not. This is a green flag. They're losing time. Their margin was a pretty good one because they had stayed out. However, is it going to be enough to keep this car in front? All depends on how quick this stop goes. Changing out the drivers right now. That is Dishaw getting out of the car, Nowicki getting in. Remember, this team has won 3 consecutive compact races. Dishaw missed the opener. He was partnered with Nowicki to win the most recent 2. Nowicki won the first one with a different partner. They'd like to keep that string alive. Problem is, they're stopping under green. Window net is in, driver is in. It is all fuel. Tires not a problem. These cars handle so well, very light. They're just trying to get as much fuel in as they need to get to the finish, and they're going to send them out. Crew watching it very carefully, watching, and of course they are timing the fuel flow as well. As soon as they get fuel in, they'll get him out, and hopefully they'll still be in position here to take a run at least at the win in compact.
Well, Steve already has the hat trick, as you indicated, Greg, with 3 straight victories at Sebring, Las Vegas, and Road Atlanta. On 2 of those occasions, he was partnered with Rick. Let's see if he can go for 4 straight here this afternoon. Back to the battle up in front. There's a look at 2nd place and 3rd place right together on the racetrack.
And boy, poor Eric Van Cleef is really not been hitting the traffic very well. And it's been costing him some track position as we go back up front. That is our leader, Andy Pilgrim, and this is the gap back to 2nd and 3rd. Look at how hard Van Cleef is pushing as he comes down the hill, running a little wide through turn 4, not an ideal line into turn 5.
Well, you know that on this next pit stop, Andy Pilgrim will relinquish the driving to Terry Borcheller. However, when they make the pit stop for car 70, we're guessing that Tremblay may stay on board and finish the run. Eric Van Cleef may stay on board and finish the run in car 88.
Well, we assume that's their strategy, but we don't know, and they can always change. They can always change their minds during the race, but ideally you only do 1 driver change during these races.
So again, these guys battling back and forth, catching traffic as they have been, allowing your leader to put some distance now between 1st and 2nd.
And finally, Van Cleef gets a bit of a break there in traffic and is able to pull up alongside, and they run into turn 1 side by side, but Tremblay manages to keep him behind. So finally Van Cleef catches a bit of a break. Someone has apparently been off the road to the exit of 1 because it's very dirty down there.
They still have a gap to close down to be in a position to challenge for the lead, but once again, we still have 1 pit stop to go.
Well, I think that if these 2 start battling the way they just were, running side by side through the corners, this man is going to just drive away. He's going to be long gone.
Now remember that there will be a driver change on the BMW team, the 54 car, as Borcheller standing by, so that'll be a complete pit stop. May not change tires, but they'll top off the fuel and change drivers.
Little wave there from Pilgrim to some of the slower cars. Thanks for the break in traffic. Always good to make friends with the slower cars. So there's the gap. There's the leader. We just saw Pilgrim go by turning into turn 8 at the end of the straightaway, and there's 2nd and 3rd. And this is about as close as Van Cleef has been in quite some time. So he is right there. He is poised. It may take a small mistake. It may take a bit of traffic, but he is right there and ready to go.
Well, after this event, they will move on to Sebring for a 3-hour enduro. Then Road Atlanta will wrap up the season in October, another 3-hour event. Would it be possible that Nowicki could win all 6 this season?
Well, that's very possible. But is it possible these 2 could do a little rubbing and bumping? I think that's also very possible. And here's the traffic. This could be the break that Van Cleef is looking for.
Oh, he gets taken off the racetrack out into the grass. Never really lost much ground.
Well, was it the break he was looking for? I don't think so. But it didn't cost him a whole lot of time. Put a couple of wheels off the racetrack.
So we've been enjoying this battle for 2nd position, but while these guys battle on the racetrack, they allow that leader to get some more ground on them. So Andy Pilgrim continues to open up that gap over this battle for 2nd. There's a look at the top 5. Of course, we have 4 classes competing here this afternoon, and we'll be back with more on Speedvision. And Andy Pilgrim continues to lead overall in the Speedvision Cup round 4, and much to the surprise of many, he continues to leg out that lead just a bit with the help of both traffic and also the fact that second and third have been battling.
Well, they have, and now you can see Tremblay there has broken away just a little bit from Eric Van Cleef, and we don't know, maybe while we're on break, Van Cleef got caught in some traffic, but definitely the biggest gap we've seen between those two cars in quite some time.
Andy has to be getting tired. He is driven from the opening green flag. Is there a threat of breaking some concentration? He's got a fairly sizable lead right now.
Well, I can almost turn that around and ask you the question. You know, Andy has a string like no one else in terms of finishing races, sports car races, and you don't get to that level and you don't accumulate that kind of record by making any kind of mistakes. And I think his record speaks for itself. And so I doubt you will see Andy Pilgrim make any mistake of any kind.
You see he's still working traffic. A couple of cars out in front of your leader. And there's a bit of a gap back to that battle for second position between the number 88 car of Van Cleef and the number 70 of Sylvain Tremblay. But Andy Pilgrim, the record that you alluded to, once again, he's completing his 113th consecutive race in a sports car event without a DNF. I know we underscore that each time we're on the air, but it's a remarkable record when you consider how long it's taken to get to that point, how many different race cars in every race was with a teammate.
Well, no, with different race cars, different teammates, different crews, different racetracks. I mean, it's not like there's any one thing that's constant. The only thing that's constant is Andy Pilgrim, and he's done such a fantastic job. And surely it's got to be some kind of, you know, a Guinness record of some kind, because you know, in terms of race cars that break, all the mechanical problems you can run into, all the problems you can run into with co-drivers, it's just phenomenal that you could get that far, and he has done a tremendous job.
Well, back there in the third spot is Eric Van Cleef. That car was actually started by Craig Conway. I think we have a chance to go down to the pit lane, and Calvin Fish has caught up with Craig.
Craig Conway jumped out of the number 88 machine, now driven by Eric Van Cleef. And it seems a surprise that Andy Pilgrim is actually pulling away from the two turbo cars with that BMW.
Well, it's not so surprising. The track's become very slippery as the heat and the temperatures come up, and that negates any horsepower advantage that the turbos might have. BMW is typically known for handling and braking, so that's helping them right now, but it's not over yet.
So there's a look at Andy Pilgrim in the BMW M3 number 54. But again, no matter what he's done on the racetrack, there still comes a pit stop, and anything can go wrong. We've seen how tight these pits are, how narrow they are. The congestion could really create a problem pit lane.
It always can, and of course they have to make a driver change. The other two teams have already made their driver change, so more opportunities to run into problems making driver changes.
Andy Pilgrim, as you take a look at Will Nonemaker, who leads the touring class.
These Mazda MX-6s have been very, very competitive these last few years. Again, this is another car that has now gone out of production, so there will be a car that will replace it, and you know, as people get a hold of those cars, they will develop them to go racing. And as a matter of fact, the M3 won't be around a whole lot longer because there's a new 3 Series BMW coming. So there's cars and different cars that are constantly coming into this series and evolving and going out, and that's one of the most interesting things about this championship, is that the variety of cars you have and the different cars that come and go.
Good close look at Andy Pilgrim. Now the question is, obviously they want to make a pit stop under yellow, but they want to be in a position to get in the pits first before it gets congested.
Well, that's true, but as the field thins out and as the driving settles down, there are obviously fewer opportunities for yellow flag situations, full course yellow flag situations, because you're less likely to run into problems. So they're not counting on a full course yellow. If it happens, they'll take it, but otherwise they'll just make the best stop they can under green, get that driver change done, and hope that the other cars don't get the opportunity to stop under
look at
yellow.
this.
And who knows, this could create a situation.
Dick Starita has taken some abuse from that tire barrier. He is climbing out okay. But there is the safety vehicle. We have a full course yellow on lap 63. That will give the leader or leaders a chance to make that final stop under yellow.
Well, it looks like it will, so he will want to get to pit lane as quickly as he can, get in, get that stop done. There's Andy Pilgrim leading Tremblay, Van Cleef, Ron Johnson, and Peter Sachs. As we look at the class standings, we'll be back to Mosport Park.
Under a full course yellow, here comes your leader. Andy Pilgrim will bring the BMW to the attention of the pit crew and make a driver change as Terry Porcello ready to climb on board. So a 25-mile-per-hour pit lane speed limit. And the overall leader is in the pit lane under a full course yellow. We would anticipate other pit stops as well, or at least fuel. So right now, let's go down to Greg Creamer for this pit stop.
The number 54 Masari Mueller BMW is in, and they got the gift. Full course yellow has come out. They didn't think they were going to get it. They were getting very worried, and suddenly it happened. They have Andy Pilgrim out of the car. Terry Borchler going behind the wheel. Very talented driver. They're checking the tires, but I don't see any indication they're going to change them. So apparently that handling change they made to the shocks in the first stop has given their tires great life, which makes sense. Superb handling. They don't have to worry about it, so it's fuel. And of course, we're well into the final hour of this race, so fuel shouldn't be an issue. They're just going to get enough in to make sure. And Pilgrim's going to head out. A great move by the team, and a lot of luck going to play into their hands very strongly here. Now the number 70 Mazda has made a stop, and they are in and out much quicker, of course, due to the fact there was no driver change required. But fueling taking awfully long here. Got the car dropped down, but that stop took forever for the 54 machine. That could be a problem.
Let's go on a pit lane now to Calvin Fish.
Eric Van Cleef is in with the number 88 Toyota Supra. It should just be a splash of fuel. There's about 45 minutes left in this event. And Eric took on some fluids there. The mechanics handed one through the window. They've actually got the car in the air. It creates a little bit more gravity for the fed tank here, which gets in a little bit quicker. But it's going to be interesting to see who can get their cars out of pit lane first. And Eric's away.
So now when you have that driver change and put Terry Porcello in, it's up to him in traffic to get the job done.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Tremblay's team did a great job to get him out in front, and they got 2 tires on that car. So the BMW did not get tires, and the Mazda did. Now, we see these cars now getting waved around the pace car. When the pace car first comes out, they pick up the overall leader. When that overall leader pits, they keep everyone behind the pace car until the incident is cleaned up, and then they wave everyone by the pace car until they pick up the overall leader after the pit stops. That is Tremblay. So all of those cars that got waved by get the advantage of getting that lap back, and that's the rules in sports car.
Pit lane not as congested as it was earlier this afternoon. There is the Dick Starita Mazda on the rollback. You see the heavy damage to the hood. And you can also see what a great job those tire barriers can do.
Interesting that they were rolling a wheel out there. I wonder if that car didn't lose its left front wheel, and that's how it ended up in the tire wall.
Leaving the pit lane is Lance Stewart, now leading in the touring class in car number 10. So we'll have to see what the BMW, as we take a look at Bill Fenton, who's leading in the compact class now. We'll look at what that number 54 BMW with Terry Borcello on board can do in the traffic as we get to the final quarter of this race here this afternoon. A 2-hour and 45-minute timed event. Again, you can see the damage to that car, but again, less than it would be had it hit the concrete wall and not that tire barrier.
Those tires, they just are magic. They are just phenomenal, and they save a lot of damage and they save a lot of injuries at the same time. So we're under full course yellow, and we'll come back to Mosport for the restart after these words.
Lights on the pace car are now off, but under yellow gives us a chance to show you that Toyota race recap as we stand here once again in Grand Sports. It's still Vardy and Tremblay out in front. Take a look at the rundown of the top 8. 4 classes running here this afternoon. McMillan and Fitzgerald still leading number 81 in sports. As you look at the rest of the sports entries here this afternoon, in the touring class, there's number 38 car. We've seen that car in victory lane a number of times over the past 2 or 3 seasons. And in touring, compact class, the Wiki car going for 4 straight is now in 2nd position. There's a look at that car right now with the former rally champ on board, Steve Nowicki. The pace car off the track. We're ready for the restart. There's a look at your leader. Let's see where 2nd place is. A lot of lap cars now between 1st and 2nd.
Well, this
Tremblay
is the
used
same,
a lot of racetrack that time.
and this is the same situation Tremblay was in on the last restart, where he had nice clean racetrack out front. Now we have Borcheller on board the M3, so now he has to get settled in, and this might play into Tremblay's hands for a little while. It'll depend on how quickly Borcheller can get himself settled in and get to the point where he's turning the quick laps, potentially tighten up that gap down to Tremblay.
Realistically, when you climb on board as the 2nd driver, how many laps would it take to develop that rhythm?
Well, it depends who you ask. If you were to ask the driver, you know, he'd probably like to have 4 or 5 or 6. If you ask the team manager, you know, the first flying lap, they want you doing qualifying times. So it really depends. But in a case like this, Terry knows how much time he's got, and he'll just have to settle in. I'm sure it'll only take him 2 or 3 laps, but in that time, you know, Tremblay can leg out a few seconds, maybe put 5 seconds onto that lead, and that will work very nicely for him.
Well, of course, the advantage to restarting up in front, you have clean track out in front. And take a look at the Van Cleef car, number 88, has traffic in front of him. Traffic also in front of Terry Borcheller's number 54. Clean sailing right now for that number 70 Mazda.
A little bobble there turning into turn 8.
Tremblay looking for his 3rd win of the year. He teamed with Nick Ham for victory at Sebring. Last outing, he teamed with Joe Vardy to win at Road Atlanta. Of course, in the other race at Las Vegas, Andy Pilgrim and Terry Borcheller brought this BMW M3 home the winner. Of course, these guys are dealing right now, the guys that just jumped on board like Borcheller, talking about getting into a rhythm. This is a different track than what he had to practice with earlier this weekend in the rain.
Well, that's true, but you did hear Craig Conway talk about how the racetrack, and boy, Borcheller not wasting any time getting up to speed, how the racetrack has been getting slick and it has been getting worse and worse as the afternoon wears on. So the heat definitely affecting the racetrack.
Van Cleef on board number 88.
Thought about having a little drink there, but decided against it. Maybe he'll wait until he gets out onto the back straightaway. And this gap now pretty tight between Van Cleef and Borcheller for 2nd place.
They climb up the hill, leg it out up to the gears, and ready straight. This is the battle for 2nd place. You're right along board, Eric Van Cleef.
Should be where the Supra has the advantage on the M3, is in sheer horsepower getting up that straightaway.
And here he comes, a move on the inside. Can he make the pass for 2nd place? This is the battle, and he has him.
And he sure carried a lot of speed into turn 8. You could see him kind of sawing at the wheel there, but he got that move made. So as Borcheller continues to come up to speed, Van Cleef right on top of it, and he takes that car up into 2nd position.
That was just the case of the turbo horsepower up the Andretti straight, allowing him to make that pass for position.
And you see the front-wheel drive Acuras and Hondas lifting their inside rear tire. Very common with these front-wheel drive cars to have them lift that inside rear tire.
The Bob Endicott car, Lance Stewart, number 10. Battle for position in class. There's the Nowicki car, that red car with the yellow stripe, number 6, trying to go for 4 straight victories, trying to remain undefeated this season. Right now, he is 2nd in his class. There's that good battle. Lance Stewart, number 10, back to the leader. And look at that. These guys are not that far behind your leader right now. So what we're saying is that all these guys are between your lead BMW in that battle for second.
And what happens on these restarts is everyone gets bunched up, and it takes a few laps for everything to get sorted out and to settle down again.
Well, with Van Cleef in second, let's go to the pit lane and Calvin Fish.
Doug Van Cleef is Eric Van Cleef's eldest brother, and Doug, you're the crew chief on the car. What's Eric telling you about the conditions out there?
Well, Calvin, according to Eric, things are a little loose out there. The track's pretty greasy. The car wants to push here and wants to be a little loose there. So the track seems to be a limiting factor right now.
That battle continues in the BMW and the Super, but right now Eric Van Cleef has the measure of Terry Borchello for second position. But again, that wide gap between first and second with a number of lap cars in between.
Well, I think Terry is starting to settle in now because he is nipping at Eric's heels. There's the leader as he crests the hill at 2, and here comes second and third. And Van Cleef actually locked a wheel there. Locked a wheel.
Off course, and you're on board.
Locked a wheel at the top of the hill and ended up wide of that first apex. And earlier in the show, we saw him out there, and that's not where you want to be. You don't want to be wide of that apex turning in. And lucky to go off the racetrack there and not suffer bigger consequences at that part of the racetrack.
But took himself out of contention for a victory or even second place here this afternoon. There are the standings right now. We also show you the top runners in each class. We're coming right back. And look at this. The question has been answered. Could Terry Borchello take over, make the long pit stop for the driver's change, and still come back through traffic to challenge the Mazda? And there it is. What, about 8-9 car lengths now separating first and second.
Borchello has done a great job to close that gap down, and he is now within striking distance, and it won't take much for him to get by. A little bobble in traffic, a little wide of the apex here or there, and he'll be through.
Of course, traffic can play a role in the final stages of this event. Let's go down right now and check in on some pit strategy. Here's Greg Creamer.
Situation getting a little bit interesting at the front again in the Grand Sports Division. Talked a little bit earlier to the number 70 driver, Joe Vardy, who started that car. When they made a stop, they took on 2 left side tires, and both tires had 2 pounds more pressure in it than the tires they started with. The car was getting a little bit of a push in the right-handers. By going with that, they were able to actually get the car to rotate a little bit better turning in. It's changed the spring rate. The car is working very well, and they needed those left side tires. Now in the BMW pit, number 54, situation there is interesting. Borchello now has just radioed that he's really starting to feel the rhythm. His times are coming down. He's closing a little bit on Sylvain Tremblay at the front. They're concerned, and the reason their stop took so long with that refueling, they have to run 4th gear. When they go to 5th, they can't stay with the Mazda. The gearing is not working. They're using a little bit more fuel. That's their main concern, but they're going quick.
I wouldn't say he's closing up. I would say he has closed up.
He has closed, and he is right there. Now, here's the classic situation. The Mazda will pull out a bit of an advantage up the hill into turn 8. Important for Borchello to get around this slower car, because that will not help him if he gets caught behind that car, and that definitely does hurt him. But this is what Tremblay wants to see more of. Slower cars in between himself and Terry Borchello, and boy, that really hurt Borchello.
Again, as we have alluded to earlier, it's all where you get these cars on the racetrack. Gets by that time, going into turn 1, the gap remains about the same. Now, on a track like this, would you rather have a car that brakes well and handles well, or a car just purely with the horsepower? And I know what you're answer. Every race driver wants horsepower.
I want both.
Yeah, well, you're greedy. You can only have one or the other.
Oh,
horsepower or handle.
Borchello drops a couple of wheels at the exit of 2 there. Well, I'll tell you what I want. I want a car that has balance, and I think that's what the BMW has. It's not excessively powerful, but it has balance. It's got great handling, it's got great brakes, and it's got decent amount of horsepower. And that's not to say the Mazda doesn't handle well and doesn't have good brakes, but I think what the BMW has is overall balance.
But this racetrack is designed with that long uphill climb before you get to the finish line. I'd rather have the horsepower, that long uphill climb.
Well, let's see who wins. I think, you know, I would rather have the balance. I would rather have, now, you know, we've got a bit of information here because we've already seen Andy Pilgrim in this car go out and stretch out a lead in front of this Mazda. So we know that the BMW has got the legs to do that. It's got the package to do that if Terry can get around this Mazda.
Of course, again, traffic can play a role as well in the winning lap of this race. But if we're just two cars, these two cars, I like horsepower.
Well, you can take the horsepower, I'll take the balance.
Now, no matter what we want, they will settle this on the racetrack. Mazda or BMW.
The Speedvision Cup is presented by Toyo Tires. On the road or on the track, Toyo Proxys radios deliver quality second to none for uncompromised performance. Toyo Tires, driven to perform. And brought to you in part by Old Spice High Endurance Deodorant. For long-lasting odor protection, now you've got proof, not promises.
Well, we're back with the exciting conclusion of round 4 of the Speedvision Cup. And the question remains, will it be that Mazda number 70 or the BMW number 54? You like the handling, the balance. I like the horsepower. And right now, horsepower is leading.
Well, right now, horsepower is leading. But I'm just going based on what I saw before, which was Andy Pilgrim's ability to take that car up front. And look at that big slide there by Tremblay. Leaving turn 2, that's about 110-mile-an-hour slide down the bottom of the hill there, and that'll hurt that right rear tire.
A couple of Miatas out in front, kicking up some dirt right in front of the leaders.
Oh, and this is not a good place to catch traffic. If you're Tremblay, that's not what you want to see. You want to wait until you're out on the straightaway, and you can just blast by them.
As that battle continues on the racetrack, let's go back to the pit lane. This report from Calvin.
Andy, 5 minutes left. Things are getting pretty close up there. Can Terry get in front?
Well, Terry's got a tough job. There's a couple of places where our car is faster than Sylvan's car, and he's got to get it dead right. So it's going to be very hard because Sylvan's got so much more power up the back straightaway. There's a big difference. Handling ours, we've got handling, they've got speed. It's going to be tough for him. He's got to get him like in 2 or 4 and then try and get enough before the back straightaway.
What's Sylvain like under pressure?
Well, I think we'll find out. I passed Sylvain and pulled away from him earlier. I don't know. Maybe he learned something from following me. I don't know. I hope Terry can get him. It's going to be really close.
Well, don't forget, when Pilgrim went by Tremblay, he had those tires that already had a stint on them. And look at Borcheller pushing very hard as he exits turn 1. So now Tremblay has those fresh tires, and he is able to hold off Borcheller. So a different race car than the first stint that Tremblay did in that car.
And what Andy was saying was that he not only has to get by him, but put enough distance between those two cars that the 70 Turbo cannot get him on that long and ready uphill climb.
That's true. Now, you saw Tremblay with a little power slide leaving turn 3, and look at this gaggle of cars they're coming into. This is the opportunity that Borcheller needs. He needs to make something happen here.
So once again, the traffic playing a role, moves to the inside. Look at this. He's going to get him in traffic. So it wasn't handling, it wasn't horsepower, it was traffic.
Oh, you're going to get technical on me
Sure
here.
I am.
Well, it takes a little bit of good driving. Now, Borcheller's having to be very defensive here because Tremblay will easily be able to pull up alongside if Borcheller leaves him the room. And now they're coming up into this group of cars at the top of the hill. This is not over just yet, but a great move by Borcheller between 5A and 5B at Moss Corner to take the lead from Tremblay.
Still heavy traffic out in front of the two leaders.
Look
and
at
look at this. He goes over the pit entrance.
Well, he thought he might throw it in there.
White flag, final lap.
He thought he might throw it in there and try and get that lead back in traffic, but it didn't work, and he had to take to the pit line.
Hey, look at this. There's a lap car now between first and second. This is exactly how Andy Pilgrim talked about it playing out, getting enough space between those two cars that the turbo would not have the advantage and could not make up that gap going up that backside.
Well, now this has allowed Van Cleef to catch up, and I'll tell you, that lap BMW between 1 and 2, that was a little too defensive. And I don't know if that was just a mistake or if that was a BMW kind of blocking for a BMW, because there were a couple of moves going down that straightaway, and that really hurt Complex.
Right now, the battle appears to be for second position. As Van Cleef, look at that, smoking the tires.
Oh, Van Cleef.
Upside down, does a barrel roll on top the guardrail, on top the tires. Smoked it in, oh so hot, overcooked that corner.
Well, he tried to make up about 3 car lengths coming down that hill, and when you lock a wheel there, you're just going to lose all traction, and that's where you end up. And that is a big mistake there by Van Cleef. Now, that's not to say we know exactly what was going on in the car. He could have been having brake problems, but if in fact he was trying to make up all those positions or all that distance, that was a big, big move there.
Very early in this broadcast, I said the traffic could play a major factor in this race, and that's exactly what happened in the last 2 laps. As Borcheller takes the checkered flag, he pulls it out in the final 2 laps. Tremblay will go second. Can you believe that? It wasn't horsepower, it wasn't handling, it was traffic.
I'll still take the BMW.
I like the horsepower. There's your leader in the stock class right now, in the sports class, that is. And there is Eric Van Cleef trying to collect his thoughts and knock the cobwebs off the brain, but he took a wild ride on that final lap, but he is okay. Drivers very quick to take the helmets off. In fact, in the car, trying to cool off a bit on this cool down lap. There is your leader in the compact class, so it will not be 4 in a row for Steve Nowicki. A look now at the leaderboard showing your top 4 as we take you to Calvin Fish in victory lane.
Guys, a great run to second place. Joe, that was an awesome race out there. You've done a lot of this type of racing. Was that one of the best ever?
That's one of the best races I've ever had.
And I believe you made a slight tire pressure change on that next set of tires. And Sylvain, it looks like you just didn't quite have enough to hold off Terry at the end there. You got to be very disappointed, I'm sure.
We're crushed. We're crushed. The team worked so hard. Joe made the right call on the tires. We just very close, and it's disappointing. I gave it all I had, and I mean, I went way too high to the corner before on the last lap, and it just didn't work out for us today. We're disappointed, but we'll pick it up, and we'll be at the next race.
I tell you, it was a lot of fun. I had a great car, as always. Andy gave me one over that was fantastic, and we're just ecstatic. It was a good win for us. We needed it for points.
Helpful to have Andy talking to you on the radio during that yellow, telling you where to go quick, where not to?
Yeah, you know, I work at Bondurant, and I coach people there, but he's my coach here.
The number 88 machine of Eric Van Cleef was in the thick of the battle to the very last lap. And Eric, obviously a problem as you headed down to Moss Corner.
Yeah, I went through there just like I normally had been. I noticed that the first and second place cars were getting all bottled up, so I ran a little wide line coming down into the braking zone. Just before I got on the brakes, the car basically just started going to the left. I got on the brakes to try to slow the car, and it just took off straight towards the guardrail. It was a big surprise to me. I didn't do anything differently than I did the previous laps. The car felt great.
So Terry Borcheller saved the best for last as he made that pass with about a lap and a half to go, then held on to take the victory here, showing that with Andy Pilgrim. 113 straight for Andy Pilgrim. We'll take a look now at the podium for the sports class as we take a look at the overall finish. The victory going to the BMW team of McMillan and Fitzgerald. With BMW there in second place, and Toyota is third. Eagle Talent in fourth place. There is the touring class champions on the podium. As we show you the final results from touring, it was the Acura Integra taking the victory. The Acura Integra in second, and a Mazda and a Nissan. There is the compact class, but this time it was not Steve Nowicki in the championship. He finishes second this time around. It was the Honda Del Sol of Fenton and Beatty taking the victory. Once again, here was this pass. in traffic. It all came down to the last 2 laps of this race.
And what a great move that was. And Borchello knew he didn't have a lot of time, and he was going to have to make something happen, and he did. Did a great job.
Point standings now 2 points separating first and second in the Grand Sport. There's Michael Culper leading the sports class. In the touring class, Joe Nonamaker and Bill Pater tied, some 6 above Bob Endicott. And Steve Nowicki with the big lead in the compact class over Joe Fox.
Well, Calvin, we saw an incredible race here. We talked at the top of the show that the Speedvision Cup seems to have parity, some great racing, and this track seemed to really make that happen in spades. Didn't favor any one mark, which meant great racing.
That's right. We saw some first-time winners here today in class, and just a great battle. Mosport Park is very challenging when you bring the combination of the track and the Speedvision Cup Series together. It makes for a classic battle out here today.
Yeah, the juggernaut that was ruling in compact, a brand new winner there, and up front, lead changes right down to the last couple of laps. Doesn't get any better than this. This has been a good one.
Well, I could not agree more, guys. So on behalf of Jeremy Dale, Calvin Fish, and Greg Creamer, I'm Gary Lee. Thanks for joining us. So long from Bowmanville, Ontario, Canada.